Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Clear Path Leadercast. My name is Craig Anderson. I am the president and chief executive coach of Clear Path Coaching and Consulting, a business I started to help accidental leaders grow into their leadership role. Not all of us plan to be a leader, not all of us even saw it coming, but many of us find ourselves in that position. I found that position ending up in higher education, finance, in large financial services companies, with Fortune 500 companies, with my degree in English. It was not where I thought I would be. I learned a lot of lessons about leadership through that process. The goal for me is to help you grow faster into your leadership career, to help you move through and avoid some of the challenges and mistakes that I had. So, one of the areas that I always found inspiration in my leadership career was a lot of academic books that I read about leadership and classes I took on leadership. But sometimes a movie comes along that really teaches us a lot about business and leadership. And I recently watched Moneyball. Brad Pitt's in Moneyball. There's also a great book of it as well, which is really the story of how Billy Beane reshaped his team, his baseball team, based on a new way of looking at things, a new way of approaching the league. And I'd really encourage you to go watch the movie and see the leadership lessons that occur in it. It's really a fantastic film overall. But today I want to talk about, as Billy Beane brought this new process in, basically doing almost a data driven decision making process on scouting and how to bring players in and where you place them on the field. It was very new. It was no one was doing it except maybe the Indians at the time, and he stole their kind of guru to come help him do it with the Oakland A's. And we start to see a lot of things about leadership through that movie. So today I want to talk about three of the things that I pulled out from that movie. One, leadership is lonely. It's a recurring theme, but it really pops out in this movie. Two, leaders have to innovate. And three, leaders have to make tough calls. So let's talk about the first one, which is just something that came out where, I've spoken before on how as you progress in leadership, you find yourself surrounded by people, but you're also incredibly isolated because the decisions that you're making as a leader really can have massive impact on the people around you. And one of the things that Billy Beane says in the movie is he tries really hard not to get close to the players. He doesn't want to build relationships and friendships with them because he knows someday he may have to send them down or fire them or trade them. So he doesn't want to get close and run that risk. And that really is part of what happens in leadership. It's all great when we're growing and everybody loves it. But when you build those relationships, business changes over time. And now you're having to make really tough calls about those people call your friends. And it can really cloud your judgment. It's really important to have empathy. It's really important to have connection with your team. But moving that next level into friendship, early in your career, your friends are a lot of people you work with. But once you're up in that leadership role, having those deep friendships can make some of the decisions that are right for the business and right for most of the people in the business very difficult when you have to deal with one person. And that's just one of the many reasons that leadership is incredibly lonely. So always be aware of that as a leader. Build connection, work with empathy, but really building those deep friendships with your team may be something to reconsider. Two, leaders have to innovate, sometimes completely out of the box. That may blow up in your face, but the real way to start to move forward is to have those leaps to kind of say, get rid of, we've always done it that way, or this is how it's done. That's what happened with Billy Beane in this movie. He saw this wonderkin making decisions, saw these people consulting him, and he realized he'd kind of come up with this data-driven process for how to decide where players fell. I used to do a podcast called Q&A Q&A and Breakthrough Leadership with Lou Quinto, and Lou used to really be against the gut, and I'm a firm believer in going from your gut. But sometimes that doesn't always work out. You go from your gut because sometimes I think that tells you something you might be missing, but always have the data to back it up. Look for the right data. And that's what this approach was looking at the analytics. And a lot of businesses drive off analytics today, and a lot of baseball teams do, but it was revolutionary at the time. So he looked at that innovative way of building a team. He had a lot of headwinds against him. He didn't have the money of the Yankees. It was a small market team. How could he build that separate edge? And that's some of the things you need to look for in your business. There's a lot of small business owners that I talk to, and a lot of us are in businesses that a lot of other people are in. What is that distinction that's going to make us different? What is that innovation we can come up with in the way we sell, the way we deliver, the way we build our product? Whatever it is that's going to give us that edge. And that's why leaders have to innovate. Third point I want to touch on today is that leadership has to make hard calls, especially when you're taking your team through transition and change, like we saw Billy Bean doing in this movie. He starts out in his meeting with the scouts, and they are fighting him tooth and nail about this new approach. And it's a tremendous amount of resistance. Now, I don't think he in the movie particularly handles it well. I think there's a lot to be said for bringing people along with you and building into these ideas of change. But sometimes you need to make that fast change and you don't have the time to do it. And so you're going to face pockets of resistance in your organization. And one of the things here, if you look at the 7 dynamics of change, one of them is if you let up off the pressure of change, people will revert back to what they're always doing. And he never let up on that pressure. He pushed those scouts to say, this is the way we're going to do business. Time for you to get on board. And so he really worked hard at it. And now sometimes, a lot of the times people will come around and you've got to keep that pressure up, keep people focused, but they'll come around. What can also happen though, and we saw this in the movie with the manager of the team, he never came around. In fact, he worked in opposition. He actually did the opposite of what Billy intended by bringing these players onto the team. He was using them in ways that Billy didn't want them used. And he really ended up having to go so far as to first get rid of the players that he was using to subvert the process. Oh, sorry about the dog appearance. And the beauty of going live, to the point where he actually had to fire that manager. And that's what may happen. If there are people in your organization who don't want to go along with the change, you are going to have to make the hard call and the tough decision. And this is what I was talking about in the earlier segment of the difficulty in building those relationships and why leadership can feel so isolating sometimes. So that's really it. Those are the leadership lessons from Moneyball. Check it out. Watch for the things about leadership in the movies that you're watching. See how leaders act, how people act in opposition to them. That's a really fascinating way to build your own leadership skills. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. If you have questions, make sure you set up a time to talk to me. You can always get time on my calendar at clearpathcoaches.com/intro call. If you're having challenges in your leadership, if you're trying to find a way to take your organization through change, let's talk about it. I want to give a special shout out to Loki, who decided to come in and help us out with today's episode of Clear Path Leadercast. Look forward to seeing y'all soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.